Life wasn't always easy for Gone with the Wind star Hattie McDaniel. Before Hattie stole the show with her role as Mammy, she had to fight tooth and nail for what she wanted, not only on the silver screen but also in love. Sadly, the Oscar winner was plagued by scandals and tragedies until the end. Born to Susan Holbert in 1893, she was a poor malnourished baby that weighed just over 3 pounds. She was the youngest and one out of only 7 out of 13 who survived. But she was born a fighter. From the beginning, McDaniel knew she was a star. But as much as she loved performing, she also wanted to have a family. She was only 18 years old when Hattie married Howard Hickman in 1983. Foreshadowing what is to come in her life, her husband died just 4 years after the wedding, leaving McDaniel a painfully young widow. This was only the beginning. By the time she was in her early 20s, Hattie founded the McDaniel Sisters Company minstrel show with her sister Etta. But not long after, she received a devastating blow when her brother Otis passed in 1916, leaving her troupe penniless. McDaniel had to scrimp whatever role she could land just to get by. In 1922, McDaniel took another chance at love and married George Langford, only for it to meet a horrific end when he was shot dead. So McDaniel focused on her career and immersed herself in it, steadily climbing, working the chorus and legendary entertainer Florence Ziegfeld's tour of Showboat in Milwaukee. That was until 1929 when the stock market crashed and turned her entertainment career into dust overnight. In desperation, McDaniel had to swallow her pride and sideline her massive talents and work as a bathroom attendant in the nightclub Club Madrid. But once again, working hard pays off for McDaniel when the club's singers went home early and they needed someone for the closing act. McDaniel jumped on the opportunity, wowing everyone with her rendition of St. Louis Blues. By 1937, all of Hollywood was eyeing the casting for producer David O. Selznick's upcoming film Gone with the Wind. The competition for Mammy was so tough that even the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, was campaigning to have her own maid, Elizabeth McDuffie, to play the part. Thankfully, McDaniel made connections of her own throughout the years. Word was it was Clark Gable who nabbed the part of Rhett Butler, and McDaniel's brother Sam calling his buddy Bing Crosby who influenced the casting choice. But trouble was only brewing. Getting the part of Mammy was a dream come true for McDaniel, but many black activists criticized her for only taking on servant roles and not advancing the image of black people. McDaniel reportedly has the best response, saying, "I can be a maid for $7 a week, or I can play a maid for $700 a week." While McDaniel became a studio ally for the politics of the film, saying in an official press release, "There is nothing in this picture that will injure colored people." This made her butt heads with Butterfly McQueen, who played the much less flashy maid Prissy, who had no such hopes for the movie. After McQueen had an outburst towards Vivian Leigh, who plays Scarlett O'Hara, McDaniel had to step in and gave the controversial statement saying to McQueen, "You'll never come back to Hollywood, you complain too much." Yet, for all the faith McDaniel put in the Hollywood system, it still tragically betrayed her. Hattie McDaniel couldn't even attend her own premiere at the state of Georgia, who didn't want any of the film's many black actors to attend the gala and flout their segregation laws, even when the star Clark Gable threatened to boycott it. After the release of the film, the Academy Awards nominated McDaniel for Best Supporting Actress for her role as Mammy. This was electrifying. After all, McDaniel was the first black person, not just actress, to even be nominated for an Oscar ever. It was the 12th Annual Academy Awards in 1940. McDaniel turned heads when she walked in. The maid had turned into Cinderella and wore, as gossip columnist Llewellyn Parsons described, her hair trimmed with gardenias, face alight, and dressed up to the Queen's taste. Insultingly though, Coconut Grove had a strictly no blacks policy, and they only let McDaniel in as a favor. To accommodate her, the venue had segregated the ballroom, meaning that she had to sit entirely apart from her Gone with the Wind castmates, with her only other companion at the table being her white agent, William Michael John. That night, when the Best Supporting Actress category came up, they announced Hattie McDaniel. Yes, against all odds, McDaniel won. With tears in her eyes, she ended her short speech by saying, "My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel, and may I say thank you and God bless you." But, like a slap to her face, McDaniel's insensitive castmates had decided to celebrate at a No Blacks club for the after party, and this time the actress was denied entry entirely. So there was McDaniel with her newly minted Oscar and nowhere to go. Throughout the 1930s, McDaniel had concentrated almost solely on her career, and with her Oscar under her belt, she finally turned to romance once more. After meeting real estate agent James Lloyd Crawford, she married him in 1941 and hoped a loving family life would follow their nuptials. But in 1945, not long after announcing they were expecting, it was declared a false pregnancy by a heartbroken Hattie and ended their marriage with a divorce. Before long, she was starring as another sassy housekeeper in the hit radio show Beulah. And not long after then, in 1949, the working McDaniel met Larry Williams, an interior designer, and fell into a whirlwind relationship and thought that this was the relationship to last. But just 5 months after marrying Williams, McDaniel filed for divorce. In the days after, the breakup got bitter. No one really knows what happens behind closed doors, but rumors swirled around Hollywood that the power couple constantly got into physical altercations as well as psychological and emotional abuse that caused McDaniel to lose 12 pounds. On top of that, Williams much preferred to spend his wife's money, even asking her to fund his trip to Europe. McDaniel reportedly exclaimed, "Europe? Europe where? Europe, Pennsylvania? Here's $50 for a Greyhound bus ticket. Take it and go." McDaniel saw the schemer that he was and proclaimed, "I'm letting no man handle my bank account." But the final straw came when Williams actively tried to ruin her career. It was so awful, McDaniel confessed, that she couldn't sleep and even concentrate on her lines. McDaniel was 0 for 4 on good marriages, and sadly, she would never get another chance at love. Around the time of her divorce, McDaniel found out that she was going to star in a television adaptation of Beulah. For better or worse, Hattie McDaniel's legacy was playing one of the help, and many black actors and activists continue to criticize her for it. In particular, McDaniel had a long-standing feud with NAACP leader Walter White, who preferred more ostensibly progressive, more socially conscious, and often lighter-skinned stars like Lena Horne over McDaniel. After years of being pigeonholed as a simple black woman, McDaniel had no problem letting White know what she thought and held nothing back. In her letter declining his invitation, she wrote that it was impossible for her to come see White for he has openly insulted her intelligence. She then added, "God has endowed me with many other talents, which Walter White and no other persons know nothing of, and they are not menial, as he has said." Despite her reputation for playing maids, McDaniel's personal life was downright glamorous. In 1942, she bought a sprawling 17-room mansion in the neighborhood that became known as Sugar Hill or the Black Beverly Hills. But the rich white residents started complaining about property values now that people who looked different from them were moving in. Using all of her charm, she organized against her unfriendly neighbors, collecting close-by luminaries like Ethel Waters and Louise Beavers in the process. Then she shut down their claims in the court of law, and according to her biographer Jill Watts, the beginning of the end of such residential segregation throughout the United States. At the beginning of the 1950s, things were once more looking up for Hattie McDaniel. But as with the cycle of her life, she was thrown a curveball for one last time. McDaniel was diagnosed with cancer, and very shortly after, in 1952, she succumbed to the illness at the age of just 59. Her passing released an outpouring of love as thousands of fans, friends, and other mourners attended her funeral. Hattie McDaniel was truly loved by all, men and women alike. The Gone with the Wind star made friends with just about everyone she met, including the noted libertine Tallulah Bankhead, whose relationship with McDaniel was said to be too close and that McDaniel was apparently bi. In her will, McDaniel left her Oscar plaque to Howard University, the historically black college in Washington, D.C. But because she owed debts to the IRS, they claimed her Oscar. And although the award eventually made it to Howard, the plaque disappeared in the 1960s or 1970s and is still missing to this day. But McDaniel didn't just leave us with a mystery. She also left the world with one last laugh. McDaniel's marriage to Larry Williams was tempestuous that the bad blood didn't end when she passed. She left behind a cruel tribute to him, and in her will, McDaniel graciously bequeathed to Larry Williams the grand total of $1. Sadly though, Hattie McDaniel still did not get the happy ending she was chasing for her entire life. For even until death, one of her requests was impossible to grant. The actress had requested to be buried in the famous Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Like so much else in McDaniel's lifetime, the cemetery was segregated and she had to settle for her second choice, Rosedale. Hattie McDaniel did, however, leave behind a lasting legacy and go down in history not only as the first African American to win an Oscar, but also the first Black woman to sing on the radio in the United States. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button and keep the notifications on for more old Hollywood stories.